What's frightening to me is that you're equating some minor inconveniences in your privileged life to
Why would you assume my life
an
is privileged?
unsupported...
But why would you assume my life is privileged, though? You don't know my life. I mean, I don't say that about you. Why would you assume my life is privileged?
I'm privileged.
Okay, that's fine, but why would you assume my life is privileged?
For one, you're a man.
I love how these people always miss the irony of how sexist they are. A lady walks into a dark room to debate someone who is probably half her age, knows pretty much nothing about him, immediately says he's had it easy because he's a man. I'm sorry to break it to you, but that's sexist. Also, notice how she had to bring up his sex but not his race because she is white and he's a POC. Very prejudiced of her.
You know, most people commit suicide are men. Most people who work in dangerous workplaces are men. Most people who fight in war are men.
And who set that system up?
Did you like that little mic drop moment she had? And no, it wasn't men who set that system up. When it comes to things like war, it was a bunch of sociopathic assholes who care more about money and power than the well-being of other people who set that system up. It's sexist to accuse an entire group of people of a crime just because a few people who happen to be the same sex did something bad. Also, many of those sociopaths include women. Look up Indira Gandhi. Look up Wu Zetian. By the way, calling someone privileged is not an argument. Calling someone a name is just a character attack. It requires zero intelligence to do it, and it doesn't add any new or useful information to the discussion. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, this is Jubilee's Middle Ground. Jubilee is a left-leaning channel that uses this segment to take two disagreeing parties, give them a few prompts, and see if they can come to an understanding or find some respect for each other. Very wholesome. But one of the pet peeves that I have for these kinds of discussions is that very often there are people who run on pretty much zero factually accurate information, yet have these strong beliefs and are very forceful about their opinions, to the point where I question the validity of the information of anyone who acts with as much hostility as this Facebook mom does in this video. It seems like the people who have the wrong information always have to be very pushy to get you to believe what they do, because if you actually did any research, you would easily figure out that they were wrong. And this is not a matter of opinion, these are statements of fact that she makes. One of the prompts they responded to was, owning a gun is a basic human right. Do you agree or disagree with that statement? Let's start with a statement of fact that she makes that can easily be fact-checked.
Don't want automatic rifles. Against that. Nobody needs them. The majority of people who die by gunshot are women in a domestic violence situation.
Okay, Cindy. That's her name, by the way. But Cindy, you literally have never even done a 5-second Google search on this information, and you obviously don't fact-check any of the pundits or the newspapers that you get your info from. This is a pretty well-known statistic. The majority of gun deaths are suicide, and as that kid said earlier, most suicides are men. While of course domestic violence against women is bad, men die by firearms way more than women do. And now we can see where this kind of hostile behavior she has towards men comes from when she uses the term privilege. It's because she believes something that's untrue. That's kind of where a lot of this really strong behavior comes from. Either information that is false or not knowing a lot about a particular subject. Speaking of firearms, stuff like this is what I'm talking about.
I actually debated whether or not I was going to sit down because I do believe people have the right to bear arms. I do. My issue is what kind of arms they're bearing. I believe people should get to go hunt, but do you need a semi-automatic rifle to do that? I'll tell you personally, I'm afraid of guns personally myself.
Yes, we do. We should be allowed to use tools that are effective, especially when it comes to consideration of the animal and creating as painless of an experience as possible. But more importantly, do you even know what a semi-automatic rifle is? Because literally, every time I've talked to someone who says what she did, they can't tell me what that term means or they describe it incorrectly. And it causes them to create dumb arguments because they don't know what they're talking about. For example, I've heard multiple people in my lifetime say, I think all semi-automatics should be banned, but handguns are fine. If you don't know why that statement is dumb, then go look up the definition of semi-automatic. I am tired of people doing no research and then acting like they are the smartest people in the world. I can tell these people are just listening to propaganda and these aren't their own thoughts because they literally can't define anything and they all repeat the same exact lines. All they know is, this thing is really bad because the TV person said so and I'm angry and scared. This kind of thing really shines in the next segment with the Facebook mom, Cindy.
Not being an LGBTQ+ ally makes someone a bad person.
I would question someone's empathy.
That's it.
And their awareness of the other people around them, because I guarantee you know someone that's
Absolutely,
LGBTQ.
and their environment.
Right.
I think woke people really mess this stuff up, and I think they have a big problem understanding the meaning of tolerance versus acceptance. which is apparent because as a group, they're very intolerant. Tolerance is, I don't agree with your opinion or your lifestyle choices, but I'll still treat you like a human being. For example, you might not agree with someone's opinion on abortion, but that doesn't mean you get to treat them like crap. Acceptance, or being an ally, means you agree with the person. Personally, I think it's lower empathy to only understand acceptance and not tolerance, because it's easy to treat people well if you already agree with them. And it's not moral of those two to say you're a bad person because you don't have the same beliefs. With that said, here's an LGBT conservative kid who apparently has a more mature take than the Facebook mom.
I can provide a unique perspective on this because I'm actually bisexual. So I think not being an ally, as long as you're not harming people, you're not harassing people, you're not posting on social media that these people suck, then I don't think you're a bad person for that.
You don't have to agree with someone's choices to be tolerant, but I think that idea gets skipped over a lot on the left, just like it was skipped over back in the day when conservatives were more prejudiced on this issue 30 years ago, because those people believed things that were wildly untrue. Now it's just flipped parties. For example,
I would like to think that it's a safer world
Yes.
to be LGBTQ, but that
Yes.
would be naive.
Of course.
People are getting murdered for being trans, you know,
Yes. Yes.
and gay.
no, they aren't. That's not something that's happening, especially in California where this is being filmed, which is one of the most LGBT-friendly places on the planet. Remember, Jubilee is a left-leaning channel, and ironically, they also put up this message here about misinformation.
Middle Ground is a social experiment that brings humans with opposing beliefs together. These discussions may contain viewpoints that are the result of misinformation.
The ironic part is that this terminology, misinformation, appears to just be a way of attacking non-establishment talking points, to which a lot of that stuff has turned out to be factually accurate information that big tech was trying to suppress. Big tech has admitted to that a bunch of times with various rule changes on what counts as misinformation over the past 2 years. But really, the only person who seems to be operating here on misinformation is the Facebook mom who is saying all the pro-establishment ideas. Let's go back to that statement about trans people being murdered. Jubilee tries to save that claim with research that I'm sure Facebook mom didn't know about by saying there were 375 murders of trans people last year. Problem number one, Jubilee quotes a secondary source. Where's the primary source? How do we know that the Forbes article is accurate? Second, to no surprise, the article states that the vast majority of these crimes were not in the United States. It says that most of them were committed in Mexico and South America. I would love to see the total breakdown, and I bet that next to 0 of them happened in the US. So her claim is not factually accurate. To add more context though, Cindy, the Facebook mom, has a child who is trans, and I think from her perspective it's like, oh my god, if you're not an ally, then you're here to physically attack my child. This creates a fear response which causes her to behave with so much hostility in the debate. Watch the whole thing and you'll see that she is definitely the most hostile person. Also, this false belief about crime against trans people leads you to solving the wrong problem. If the problem is suicide and not murder, then your strategy for helping these people needs to be completely different. If you don't understand the problem, then you're going to come up with the wrong solution. On top of that, false beliefs also lead to heavy amounts of intolerance.
My political opinions have hurt my relationships with friends and family.
What a shock. Cindy has lost friends over this. Now, some of this is unfortunate and unavoidable. I'm sure that over the past few years, most of us have had relationships destroyed that were previously good. But how much of that destruction in Cindy's life was due to her own behavior and intolerance? So we get this kind of duality where Cindy first says stuff like this.
I told him, hey, I respect that you think like this. Please respect me.
I think that that is, whether or not we have the same ideas, I think that that is still an admirable quality.
Yeah.
Despite getting looks or feeling like maybe you don't belong, that you're still, you have your convictions.
Yeah.
So I can respect that you're convicted.
She says that kind of resentfully, which makes me feel like she doesn't actually believe it's okay that he has his convictions. But I'll take her word for it on this occasion. However, she implies that she's tolerant of other opinions, but then she says this.
Well, I think we're talking about issues that aren't a matter of opinion, but a matter of your morality, the value of human lives. I've had to personally block a few people on Facebook, family members.
Oh, wow.
Mostly men that are married to the women in my family. Like, hey, this conversation is really getting personal and hurtful, and if you carry on this way, I'm going to have to block you.
Were they harassing you?
I feel very harassed, yeah, and belittled.
If you're all for everyone having their convictions, then why are you blocking people? I can see if they were legitimately harassing you or being very predatory. However, considering her past behavior and how she describes the situation, I don't think that's what was happening. When she was asked if she was being harassed, she said, "Well, I felt harassed," not, "Yes, I was being harassed." Were you actually harassed, or was that just your interpretation? Because I've literally watched woke people in my personal life flip out, call you names, make it personal, and say it's harassment when you simply disagree with them. I mean, you can watch that happen to Steven Crowder on Change My Mind segments quite a number of times. There was literally a girl who called the police on him for making a statement of fact. By the way, this is not the only time in the debate that Cindy doubled back on her statements. Let's go back to that segment on firearms.
I do want to ask you a question. Do you think that women should have the right to bear arms to protect themselves against?
Yeah, I'm not against the right to own guns. The prompt was, do you think owning a gun is a human right?
But do you think?
And I don't agree with that.
Okay, so you aren't for the Second Amendment. Instead of lying and gaslighting, why not just say that? Just be honest about what you believe instead of pretending that you believe stuff for morality points. Oh, I believe that people have the right to their opinion, and I believe that people have the right to defend themselves. No, you don't. You're just morally grandstanding, and that's all you've done this whole debate. Now, for those of you who didn't see my last video on this subject, Jubilee has actually done the reverse of this debate with conservative parents versus liberal kids. Let's see the difference in how a conservative parent displays his interest in allowing people to have their opinions.
You know, I read a lot of the tragic stories where family members don't talk to each other anymore. Personally, I think that's sad. Do all my family members vote the same? No. Do we have a pretty good idea of how family members may have voted? Yeah. But we went more of agree to disagree. I'm not going to not buy you a present for Christmas because, you know, you decided to vote for somebody that I don't like. Give me a break. Families are special. And we've got too many people, as you've talked about, that don't have them.
I don't think people in Cindy's family are getting a Christmas gift. But not only was that the right way to say that, I also remember this guy being very well liked in the comments when the video first came out. It's because he said it like he actually believed it, and he said it from the standpoint of, I genuinely do value your opinion, and I don't resent you because it's different from mine. Whereas the Facebook mom says to Nathan, well, you certainly have your opinion, while making a face and acting like she hates it. It's something in particular that I've noticed as I've watched a lot of these debates on Jubilee. Maybe it's just my personal bias, but it seems like the yelling, the name-calling, and the hostile behavior almost always comes from someone on the left. Not to say that this stuff is non-existent on the right, but it happens far more frequently on the other side of the political aisle. Remember that the months of rioting in 2020 came from the left, and I think quite a lot of that has to do with political leaders on the left actively encouraging violence in the disguise of morality. None of this stuff is moral. Trying to force someone to agree with you by raising your voice or calling them names is not moral. Saying someone is a bad person simply because you disagree with them is not moral. Demonizing an entire group of people for the way they were born because a few people did bad things is not moral. Using violence to get your way is not moral. Do you know what is moral? Listening to people and actively trying to understand their perspective instead of just waiting for your turn to talk so you can push your values onto them. One of the things that you learn as a content creator, especially as your voice starts reaching more people and more people criticize you, is to take a step back in your convictions a little bit. I have found quite a bit that when I'm more reserved in my opinion, my information gets more accurate, versus this sort of low-resolution description that you get from Cindy. She's operating with a crappy webcam in 144p, while she thinks she's at 1080p. Her vision of the problem isn't really clear. She knows that trans people have problems, but she can't see well enough to identify the correct one. Therefore, there is no way she could ever provide a correct solution, which means all she can do is shout her factually incorrect opinion at people. When you're forming opinions or trying to find solutions to a problem, you want as clear of an image as possible. You get that clear image by listening, being willing to be wrong, and by investigation. The goal is not to be right all the time. The goal is to have a better understanding of the problem so you can provide the best solution. Anyway, thanks for watching, follow me on Twitter, and I'll see you in the next video.